Alrighty, the game board, I wouldn't say necessarily is set, but we know whose game we are playing. We are recording live Wednesday, November 6th, the day after the 2024 election. The results are in. Donald Trump will be our 47th president and beginning in 2026. So, definitely don't want to talk about games by any means, but the reality is ultimately it is happening, and we've got to figure out how to respond and move forward, knowing who is in charge and kind of what they're planning on doing. Now, my name is Patrick Sukup. This is live in Fort Collins, our November market update 2024. This is going to be looking a lot at stats from October of 2024, the last 30 days. I'm coming to you live on the Wednesday after we had a family passing and funeral yesterday, so I was not able to go live on Tuesday, but I was kind of happy because honestly, I think everyone's attention was focused on the election, and we had a video that we released yesterday that was actually a really great video that Izzy and Zach put out, but it had just terrible views, and so clearly everyone's attention was on that yesterday. But we will look at median sales price, inventory, closed sales, new listings, and interest rates. And then we're also going to talk about maybe some of the expectations moving into the new year with the president-elect's housing focused and what they are planning on doing with the housing market. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's see here. Stop share, present, share screen. Come on. All right, here we go. So this is Fort Collins, both types of properties. We saw a 13% increase this October versus October of last year of 500,000 to 565. Condos performed a little less favorable, 1.3% increase versus last year, but residential attached up 9.7%. So the desire, and we talk about this pretty consistently, if there's any type of softening or movement, condos seem to take longer to sell for less. Condos, townhomes, and single families are always going to be the desired asset class. But I'm going to do a couple things here. I'm going to go through just strictly Fort Collins, and then I'm going to look at side-by-side comparisons to Fort Collins, Loveland, Greeley, and Colorado Springs. New listings coming onto the market, up a little bit, 2.8%. So nothing too dramatic. We are getting into the fall-winter time period where we are going to see fewer and fewer homes come onto the market. So this kind of bell curve that you see here, listings pop in spring, summer, and then are going to drop down in here in the winter months. So we're going to see this new listings number decrease quite a bit. Days on market, which is kind of a leading indicator of inventory, stagnating a little bit, but we should see this increase into the winter months. Again, December, January, we're going to see these increase during those time months. Fewer buyers on the market. Listings are going to sit a little bit longer before selling. Let's see here. Closed sales, demand. This is, I'm going to show two different things here because I thought this was very interesting data moving forward. But closed sales pumped. We were up 54% closed sales this year versus October of last year. Definitely interesting. And I'm gonna talk to you about what we saw. And I think it's very important moving forward. That's really it. Month supplies dropped a little bit. We'll see month supply actually increase into the winter month, decrease. Month supply will decrease a little bit into the winter months as new listings slow off, homes sit on the market a little bit. So we will see a little bit of a dip into January, February as far as how many homes we have for sale. It's just going to get fewer and fewer during these winter months. Not as many listings, so activity is going to go low. All right, I want to add in some places to look at. Loveland. Let's look at Loveland. Let's look at Greeley. And our neighbor a little bit further south, but still closer data than Denver. Denver skews the data quite a bit because there's so many properties for sale. All right, here we go. Sales price. We saw a relative, increase across the board, or not across the board, but flat line for Greeley and Colorado Springs. Closed sales, though, is really what I want to show here. Across the board, increase on closed sales. Now, what I want to show here is we had a client who we had a thesis that if interest rates drop into the low sixes, high fives, especially if they get to the low fives, and God forbid, high fours, there's going to be a huge rush of buyers onto the market. And I think that is what we kind of saw because interest rates bounced. Interest rates were heading down. We had our Fed meeting that suggested they did their cut, higher cut than what was expected, and insinuated that there was going to be more. And then the jobs report came out, and it blew out expectations. Like by 100,000 jobs, we outperformed, which in the interest rate world, good news is bad news. And the reason is because the Fed is saying they were wanting to decrease or cut rates because, hey, we want to make sure that we have a soft landing, a smooth landing, whatever you want to call it. And we see some signs that the economy is softening. So we're going to start to cut rates so that people start to invest more into the economy, the economic spur, blah, 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 blah. But we don't want to overheat the market, aka inflation. And when we saw these jobs numbers come out that were 100,000 higher than what was expected, we hit this bounce. It was a bouncing ball of interest rates. So I'm going to show you guys here what I am talking about. Let's see here. Stop screen share, present, share screen. Okay, I don't think I can do side by side, unfortunately, but I will share this. All right, so here is interest rates. Now, in Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, Loveland, Greeley, we have about a 30-day contract, okay? So once you go into contract, you have about 30 days of due diligence, and then you close. So what I looked at was because our sales increased in October by 54% in Fort Collins, what happened in September's interest rate world that could have caused that? And this is what we saw. This is that bounce. We were high, in this mid sixes, high sixes, and we started coming down when the Fed chair meeting happened. It was really coming. And then let's just look. I'm curious now. I'm just going to share my screen. Stop share, present, share screen. Entire screen. I hope you guys can kind of just see what I'm doing. All right, great. Hopefully that doesn't look too weird. Oh no, I'm going to do that. That's not good. Stop sharing. All right. I want to look at the payroll jobs report September 2024. How bullshit this is. And it was funny. I should show, I am going to show a screenshot. Let me show this screenshot because this is what just came up. Okay. And it said that jobs report came in 112,000 fewer than previously suggested, which is just, combined for August and 112,000 lower than previously suggested. Surged. Okay, there's a lot of data going on there, so I'm going to show you guys the interest rate. So they revised numbers. I mean, it's a freaking game, which is just really frustrating. But let me get back to the interest rates because that's what I was talking about. September, we had interest rates dropping. I mean, we locked a client. What did we do? It was like five. It was mid to low fives, and then interest rates bounced. We got down to these low sixes. These are retail lender interest rates, and they're always going to be about 0.5% higher generally than your mortgage broker that can shop and generally get you a little bit better of a deal. So they came down here and then they bounced. And today, interest rates after the election pumped quite a bit. And so I'm going to show you that screen next. It's right here. Share screen. I'll show you guys the 10-year. Okay, 10-year. Let's look at it. So the 3-month. Okay, so again, September, all of September, which then would have had these homes close in October, which is why we saw that 54% surge. We saw interest rates drop into the mid to high fives. Buyers came onto the market, swooped up homes, and closed on them in October. And then we've seen this bounce now, where now we're all the way back up to 4.4%. So we're going to see this 30-year fixed pump quite a bit over these next few days. And it's not until we get back down to that 3.64, 3.65 range that we're going to see 5%. But the conversation that we had with our client was that, yes, if this happens, we're going to see a surge. And so we jumped on the ball. We closed. We got a property under contract. There was little activity. This house had price reduction. We got it under contract, closed, because what we didn't want to have was multiple offer situations and, fighting for this when we could. So we are going to get back into our info sparks. Let's get back into our info sparks. But I think that's very telling. So keep that in mind. So right now we're at that 6.5% to 7% interest rate world. Super not sexy, but one of Trump's, discussion points, and we're going to get to here shortly, is that he wants to have mortgage rates drops, which he doesn't affect directly, but may impact inflation. Okay, so we're getting back here again. Closed sales. We saw this 54%. Sorry, that's where the 54% is. A single family detached. For both, we saw still a big surge across the board. And so all these homes that closed in October are the ones that went under contract in September when they were able to lock their interest rates. So super interesting information. Knowing going forward, if we see or expect or project interest rates to go down, which, it's a bettor's game. You can win or lose. So time in the market always beats timing the market. But that being said, when interest rates are at 6.5% to 7%, could be a great buying opportunity because you might have great, strong negotiation power on the buy side. And then if or when buyer interest rates decrease and the surge of buyers come on the market, you avoid them, and then you just go ahead and refinance. We pre-negotiated with our mortgage broker mid-September to late September refinance package, which we're going to send to all of our clients here shortly. It's just not the right time because interest rates are much higher than they were when we negotiated this. But we pre-negotiated with our lender, hey, what's some incentive that you can give? Because we've closed 85 some odd homes since June of 2022 on the buy side, which that's when interest rates have been pretty high. So closed sales, again, that's kind of think the not canary, that's not the right word, but I would say very interesting data point moving forward. If interest rates get to the high fives, low fives, you're going to see significant amount of buyer interest, and affordability is what we are really looking at. Okay, sales price across, we're looking at plus 13%. This is both attached, detached. Now for residential, let's get residential on all of these. Okay. Residential sales prices, all but Greeley had price increases. Fort Collins plus 10% versus last year. New listings, again, this is new listings coming onto the market. Loveland had a pretty decent surge. Colorado Springs, Fort Collins, a little bit. Homes for sale, actually relatively flatline against last year for Fort Collins. Huge surge in Loveland as far as homes for sale. And let's see here. That is really days on market. I think that's important. Fort Collins plus 31.7%. Homes are sitting, inventory increasing. What we are not seeing is this price reduction, but what we are seeing is a huge concentration on affordability. Now, let's jump into some post-election conversations. What is Donald Trump's housing platform, and what is he kind of wanting to get done in regards to the housing sector? And the long and short of it is really indirectly impacting the housing market. Whereas Kamala Harris wanted to do a $25,000 first-time home buyer program. There's not necessarily anything like that. There's conversations that maybe Trump has a tax incentive, but nothing that he's really directly said. He actually hasn't had a huge housing platform that he stood on. So moving forward, what we could see is both sides were talking about opening up of more federal lands. Like there, apparently in Nevada particular, there's 85% of the state's land mass is controlled by the federal government. And what they're wanting to see is deregulation of how you purchase this land, and then deregulation of the construction of homes, which I guess is interesting because a lot of the state and local government are going to be controlling a lot of those building codes and regulations and process. And so I think that's a really, really long tail, which is great. You know, I think you do need to look long term when you're talking about our nation's still very young, a couple hundred years old, and these houses could be around for hundreds of years, or the policies we make now could impact the way houses are built in future generations. But that won't impact affordability today. And especially, so you'd be looking at like before the first house could even be built, if they started like January 1st, apparently there's like an 18-month time period to buy the land, but maybe they can expedite that, but then maybe a 2 to 4 year entitlement phase. So you're looking like at 5 to 6 years before a shovel could hit the dirt on that plan. A big discussion, he wants to get interest rates down. And while he doesn't control the federal funds rates, he can potentially impact inflation. And there's a debate whether that he's going to have a negative impact or a positive impact on inflation. But he's very, especially when he was on his rallies, fanatical. And so he was quoted saying today's mortgage rates are 10, 11, 12%. And we want to drive down rates so you'll be able to pay 2% again. And we'll be able to refinance and finance your homes dramatically. If they got down to, I don't think we'll ever see 3%, let alone 2%. But I mean, maybe even if they got down to the 4s, you're going to see an onslaught of buyers onto the market. So we will see if what he does negatively or positively impacts inflation. The next thing that he talked about, which again would be indirectly, and you could fight either way, is a crackdown on immigration. What he wants to do is have kind of a mass deportation of, I don't know how many millions of Americans or, people that are living in America. And this could have a positive and negative impact as well. Potentially more rentals. Most of these are probably rentals. So you're not necessarily looking on purchase, but on the rental side, more vacancies, more supply, less demand. So your prices might come down, opening up opportunity for rental reductions. But a lot of these migrant workers are, trade labor. So you could potentially see less trade labor and our labor increasing. So there could be a catch-22 there. The 10-year mortgage right now definitely acted differently. They're expecting potentially more government spending, potentially inflation increasing. And so we did see a pretty decent pump in the 10-year treasury, which I showed earlier. One of the things that they are wanting to do on the housing side is get Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac out of conservatorship. So in 2008, they went into conservatorship, basically government-backed security. So they backed all of the mortgages that Fannie and Freddie were buying, move these back into a private entity, which could remove some government regulation, government oversight. But there could be increased fees because of how they're going to be bought and the liquidity and the government backed portion. So, but that is something that he wants to get out, and he thinks they could remove some fees, decreasing costs to the end consumer. Again, I think that's indirectly potentially impacting housing affordability, but nothing like substantial, nothing that you're going to see tomorrow. And not saying that's the good thing or a bad thing. I thought this was a really interesting quote. This is from Housing Wire. A Housing Wire analyst suggests that as many as 8 regulatory agencies can experience day one leadership changes, including FHFA and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. And what he's suggesting here is that deregulation, what they're saying between Elon and Trump is that $2 trillion in cuts. A lot of this could be on the housing side, try to cut fees to then subsequently help the end borrower. So again, a lot of these would be indirectly, potentially, because either it seems like a lot of these could go either way, benefit positively or negatively affordability for homeowners. The biggest thing that he wants to do, it seems like, is to get interest rates down. And the way he's going to try to do that is by way of pounding down inflation. And that will be TBD as far as if that actually happens. And then, of course, there is some mention of potential tax incentives for first-time home buyers. Let's see here. We just got a question. Wouldn't those being deported be vacating very poor housing? Would that be a demand for Fort Collins? I'm not sure. I guess I don't understand the question totally. Would that be a demand for Fort Collins? Yes, you're absolutely right. It's going to be more affordable housing rentals that potentially would be impacted. Maybe some of those are in Fort Collins. Probably not any home ownership as far as opening up supply for that. So it'd be more on the rental side for the deportation or of immigrants and how that might impact. So again, kind of the long and short of it is a lot of this is TBD, but there's no direct housing plan for, because there was conversation that we had with clients of like, hey, let's see who wins the election, because Kamala Harris was wanting to put a $25,000 into any first-time home buyer pocket. And, you know, I took advantage of when Obama had cash for clunkers. I absolutely traded in my 92 Ford Explorer for a 2009 Kia Sportage at the time. And I can't remember the tax incentive, but it was enough for me to sell my car, get it crushed, my truck, and buy a new one. And that was the same thing for first-time homebuyer tax incentives. I wasn't in a first-time homebuyer time period at that time, but a lot of people took advantage. So there are no direct programs to spur buyer activity, but I will say, especially based off the graphs that we saw, if interest rates do get down to low 6s, high 5s, and if they get lower, you are going to see a incredible spur of buyer activity, as it is directly impacted, it looks like, to affordability. And we're not seeing prices come down. So right now, it feels like the only lever to pull is interest rates. And I will say, look at this. I'll show this real quick, because I think this is really important, especially just on the health of the market. I'm going to share my screen. All right, share screen. And I've made a lot of predictions in my life, some good, some bad, But this prediction I did make, and I think it's very healthy for the market because I think an interest rate in the high fives, mid fives would be healthy long term. Of course, that's hard to hear as a first-time home buyer or somebody who might want to sell their 2.75% mortgage and go buy new. But I think it's healthy for a healthy appreciating market. And because we saw this hockey stick, I don't think we need to see. I'm going to show just Fort Collins, and I'm going to show median sales price on a rolling 12-month number over the last. I'll just show it max. So we've had this since 1970s. We've had an annual appreciation of about 5.5%, which is relatively healthy. I mean, now granted, once you get to higher numbers, that's going to have to taper off a little bit. But again, the power of real estate is being able to buy a $600,000 asset for $30,000 and enjoy the benefits of appreciating on $600,000 versus $30,000. But in this COVID era, we saw a hockey stick of appreciation. I mean, COVID starts March of 2020, and interest rates was June of 2022. So, June of 2022, 582 versus 433, $150,000 over, the span of basically 2 years. So pretty dramatic, 25 plus, almost 35% or something along those lines of appreciation. But we've seen this flatlining since August of 2022, August, September, October of 2022. For all intensive purposes, flatlining. And now we're in October of 2024. So we've seen $24,000, and on $600,000, that's a 3% appreciation over the last 2 years. While in the meantime, people's incomes have been increasing at a greater rate than inflation. And so, yes, interest rates being higher has stagnated property price appreciation, allowing people's incomes to increase. Still not a healthy relationship between Fort Collins incomes and home values, but healthier than it was in October of 2022. So we've seen 2 years of income increasing at a faster rate than price of home appreciation. So if interest rates do drop into the mid to high 4s, 5s, you will see a spur of activity. Real quickly on the Fort Collins side of things, as far as what passed, we did see. Oh shoot, I might have exited. No, we did. We did see Fort Collins ballot issue 2A, which is a 25-cent tax on $100 of sales tax or of purchases going to our streets for the next 20 years. So Fort Collins streets will continue to look amazing. Laramie County is undecided on their 15-cent sales tax on streets. And then I was conflicted on this, ended up voting for it. And it sounds like, and it looks like it was relatively strong one way. It was 57% of the vote voted for Poudre School District R1 ballot issue 4A, increasing the mill levy, by $25 per $100,000 assessed value, which will raise $49 million annually for the school and allow them to kind of have, the way I viewed it was allow a runway to hopefully figure out some of these efficiencies, add AC into buildings, different types of things. So that was pretty big. And it showed how much City of Fort Collins supports, because actually Thompson Valley had a similar mill levy increase that did not pass. So great job, Fort Collins, supporting one of your most important, assets in Poudre School District. That is it for my post-election market update. I will say we are moving into the slower months as far as the season goes. We are having good activity, a lot of people reaching out. So thank you for anyone who's reaching out. if you're buying, selling, or relocating or investing here in Northern Colorado, give my team and I a text, call, or email. We'd love to help and work with you. Definitely have got our fingers on the pulse of the market. We are dialed into what's happening in Fort Collins and Northern Colorado, and would love to be an asset on your team. But we come to you live once a month, usually every Tuesday, on the first Tuesday of every month, giving you a market update. But otherwise, we are releasing videos every Tuesday and going live every Monday to talk about what's happening at City Council, what's going on in Fort Collins, and things to do. So tune in, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and give this video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed the content. Thanks for joining, everybody. Until next time, have a great day.